Those useless books will never do anything for that orphan girl anyway. That morning, in a small kitchen, Mercy's own aunt stood and watched the fire swallow page after page of the notes Mercy had stayed awake countless nights to write by hand. Beside her stood Gloria, her cousin, arms folded, smiling. Not an innocent smile. The smile of someone who had been waiting a long time for this exact moment. Mercy dropped to her knees beside the ashes, her trembling hands digging through them in vain. Tomorrow was the most important exam of her life. And everything she had prepared was now only smoke. But there were 3 things her aunt did not know. She did not know how this orphan girl could rise at 4 o'clock every morning, without a single word of complaint. She did not know that Mercy had hidden something in a place no fire could ever reach. And she did not know that just 1 year from this day, the very woman smiling in the smoke would stand at this girl's door, the orphan she once despised, begging her for help. When the world tries to burn down your future, that is often the very moment destiny is quietly preparing your breakthrough. Fire can burn paper. But fire can never burn what has already taken root inside a person's mind. Stay with this story until the very end, and watch the girl they tried to break rise in a way no one could stop. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications to support our mission of bringing you powerful and inspiring stories. Now, let's begin. Mercy was not always poor. When she was 15, her family had little money, but their home was full of laughter. Her father, Samuel, was an honest carpenter. Her mother sold vegetables at the market. Every evening, the whole family gathered around a small oil lamp. Her father told stories, her mother mended clothes, and Daniel, her 10-year-old brother, would lie with his head on his sister's lap until he drifted off to sleep. Samuel often said something Mercy would never forget. People can take everything from you, but no one can take what you have learned. So learn. Learn anything you possibly can. Then, one rainy afternoon, everything collapsed. Her parents traveled to the district market to sell their goods, and on the road home, there was an accident. In a single night, Mercy and Daniel became orphans. Mercy still remembered the funeral. It rained. People came to offer their sympathy, and one by one, they left. When everyone was gone, only the 2 children remained, huddled together in an empty house. She held Daniel tightly, and made herself a promise. No matter what happened, she would never let her little brother be abandoned. Her father left behind very little money. But he left one thing. A small piece of land at the edge of town, along with the title deed, which he always kept carefully wrapped in oilcloth. Not long before he died, he placed that document in her hands, and said, "This land is your future. It is not worth much now. But one day, it will be. No matter how hard life becomes, no matter who tries to tempt you, never sell it." Mercy did not fully understand him then. But she carved his words into her heart. After the funeral, her aunt, Patience, came to take the 2 children into her home. The neighbors all praised her, opening her arms to 2 helpless orphans. But only Mercy knew that under that roof, she was not a beloved niece. Slowly, she became an unpaid servant. The change happened so gradually that, at first, she did not even notice it. The first week, her aunt asked her to help out by sweeping the floor. A month later, every chore in the house was hers. Sweeping the yard, fetching water, lighting the fire, washing, cooking. Daniel was still small, and she did not want him to suffer, so she carried it all. She woke before everyone, and went to sleep after everyone. To pay for Daniel's schooling, because her aunt said plainly, "Feeding you is generous enough, you find your own school fees," Mercy began frying small cakes to sell at the market. Every coin she earned, she divided into 3 parts. A large part went to Daniel's school fees. One part she saved, hidden in a tin box beneath a loose floorboard. And one part, the smallest, but the most precious, she set aside for a dream of her own. An evening class in bookkeeping and accounting. Why accounting? Mercy had her reason. When her father was still alive, a timber dealer once tricked him into signing a paper he had not read carefully. The man wrote one thing and said another. Her father lost an entire season of work, all because he could not understand a few numbers, and a few lines of fine print at the bottom of the page. That night, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he said to Mercy, "I did not lose, because I was lazy. I lost because I did not know. Promise me you will never let anyone cheat you simply because you do not understand." Those words stayed with her. Mercy made a decision. She would learn to understand. Understand money. Understand contracts. Understand the world where people use paper to bully the poor. She believed one simple thing. If she could understand numbers, then one day she would be able to protect her father's land and rebuild a life for the two of them. But in that house, no one shared her dream. Aunt Patience looked at the two orphans as nothing but a burden. And she herself had a past. In her youth, Patience had dreams too, but her family was poor. She was married off young, then abandoned by her husband, left alone with a daughter and a heart full of bitterness. She had stopped believing in dreams long ago. And when she saw this penniless niece still daring to dream, something inside her stung. Not pity, but irritation. As if the girl's dream was mocking her own failed life. Accounting? She laughed when Mercy mentioned the class. A little cake seller wants to study accounting. Look at my life. I dreamed too, and what did it get me? Who do you think you are? Her daughter, Gloria, was even crueler. Gloria was the same age as Mercy, but she had never done a single day of hard work. She slept until noon, went out with friends, wore makeup and new clothes. Her mother spoiled her endlessly, perhaps trying to make up for a childhood without a father. But that spoiling raised only one thing in Gloria. A habit of finding joy in dragging others down. Whenever she saw Mercy return from the market, covered in oil and dust, Gloria would smirk. "Look at you," she would sneer. "You smell like oil, like a common street vendor. Do you really think numbers will turn you into someone important? Wake up. You were born to carry trays, not to sit behind a desk." Mercy never answered. She had learned that arguing only made things worse. She would lower her head, walk straight to her corner of the house, and quietly open her notebook. But deep inside, the words still hurt. Only Daniel understood his sister. Every night, the boy would secretly bring her a cup of water and sit beside her as she studied. "Mercy," he once asked, "why don't you rest? I can see how tired you are." Mercy stroked his head. "If I rest, who will take care of you? You just study hard for me. One day, the two of us will never have to live off anyone again." Daniel nodded. In the eyes of that little boy, his sister was the whole world. Mercy's day began at 4 o'clock in the morning. In the dark, she kneaded the dough, shaped each piece, and dropped them into hot oil. The smell of frying cakes drifted through the little alley before the roosters even crowed. By the time the sun rose, she had already balanced a tray of cakes on her head and set off for the market. She stood quietly at her usual corner. Some days she sold out before noon. Some days it rained, the market was empty, and she stood until evening with her tray still half full, carrying the rest home for Daniel. Some days she did not earn a single coin. But she never missed a day. Day after day, she was there, at that corner of the market, with her tray of cakes and a dream that no one could see. A few of the older vendors began to notice her. Among them was Mama Comfort, a cloth seller, who had worked that market for over 30 years. She had the eyes of a woman who had seen through human hearts across many seasons. "That girl is different," Mama Comfort often told the other vendors. "The others sell, then gather in groups to gossip. But that one, after she sells, she sits and writes things down. She does not only sell. She calculates. On slow days, Mama Comfort would buy a few cakes she did not even want. "Take it, my child," she would say. "Heaven does not abandon the hard-working." Words like those gave Mercy the strength to keep going. Every night, after she had washed the oil from her hands, Mercy sat beneath a small lamp and opened her worn accounting notebook. She recorded every coin earned, every coin spent. She learned how to keep books. She learned to calculate interest, capital, and the true cost of goods. She learned to read a contract, line by line, word by word, including the faint fine print people hide at the bottom of the page. She applied what she learned straight to her own tray of cakes. She worked out exactly how much one cake truly cost, and how much it earned. She discovered that a type of cake she had been selling for ages actually earned her nothing at all. She changed the recipe, changed the type, and for the first time, the money in her pocket at the end of the day grew noticeably thicker. The evening class was taught by Mr. Okoro, an older man, who had once been an accountant for a large company, before returning to teach the poor for fees, so low they were almost free. He quickly noticed the student, who always sat in the front row, her eyes shining despite a full day of labor. One day, he kept her back after class. "Mercy, you are the best student in this room," he said. "While others study to pass an exam, you study as if your life depends on it." "It does, sir," Mercy answered softly. "My life truly depends on it." Mr. Okoro looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. From that day, he began lending her extra books, staying behind to teach her things beyond the syllabus. He became her teacher, and slowly, almost like a second father. One evening, the class discussed contracts for the sale of property. Mr. Okoro drew an example on the board. When someone offers to buy a piece of land cheaply, he taught, it is not always because they are kind. Sometimes it is because they know something the seller does not. For example, that a major road is about to be built through it. So before you sell anything, you must always ask one question. Why does this person want it so badly? Mercy wrote that line in her notebook, and underlined it twice. She had no idea that, not long after, those very words would save her entire family. One afternoon at the market, Mercy witnessed something she could not ignore. Mrs. Rose, the fish seller at the next stall, stood trembling, holding a piece of paper, her face pale. A loan shark was forcing her to sign it. "You borrowed a few coins, from me," he said. "Now, with interest, it is 3 times that. Sign here, and I take your stall to clear the debt." Mercy stepped forward. "May I see the paper, please?" The man glared at her, but Mercy had already taken it, and was reading. With what she had learned in the evening class, she immediately saw the problem. "This interest rate is 5 times higher than the law allows," she said calmly. "And nowhere does this paper record the 2 payments she already made to you. If you take this matter anywhere, the one in the wrong is you, not Mrs. Rose." The man froze. He had not expected a little cake seller to read these things. In the end, he cursed under his breath, and walked away. Mrs. Rose gripped Mercy's hands, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my stall. You saved my whole family." Word spread through the market. The cake girl could read documents. She knew the law. From then on, whenever anyone had trouble with paperwork, they came to Mercy. She helped them all, and never took a single coin. It simply made her happy. Because for the first time, the things she had learned were helping other people. But she did not know that, right inside her own home, a storm was gathering. And this time, she would be the one who needed saving. It all began with her father's land title. Mercy hid it in the tin box, buried beneath the loose floorboard in the corner, along with her savings. It was not just a piece of paper. It was the last promise she kept to her father. One afternoon, while carrying water home, Mercy heard her aunt talking with a strange man inside the house. She stopped at the doorway. The man's name was Udo. He was finely dressed, wore a gold watch, and his voice was as sweet as honey. He was a land dealer known across the region for his cunning, a man who made his living buying cheap land from the naive. "That patch of land at the edge of town is worth almost nothing, madam," he said. "Just dust and weeds, sitting there going to waste. But I feel for your situation. A woman alone, raising a daughter, and now burdened, with 2 orphans on top of it. I will pay you cash, today, money you can finally enjoy. All you have to do is sign here." Mercy felt her heart pound in her chest. That land did not belong to her aunt. It belonged to her and Daniel. Her father had told her never to sell it. That night, after everyone was asleep, she crept close, and glanced over the contract Udo had left on the table. Her hands shook as she read. With everything she had learned, her eyes went straight to the small print at the bottom. The purchase price was 1/10 of the land's true value. And worse, there was a clause stating that the seller waives all rights to any future benefits, including compensation if the government built a road, or a new market, through the land. Mercy remembered the rumor that had been circling the market for weeks. A major road and a new marketplace were about to be built, and they would run right through that piece of land. She also remembered Mr. Okoro's words. Why does this person want it so badly? She understood everything. This man felt no compassion for anyone. He knew the land was about to be worth 100 times more. He was tricking a greedy, naive woman into handing over the property of 2 orphan children for almost nothing. The next morning, Mercy gathered all her courage. "Aunt, please, do not sign it," she said. "I read that contract. This land is worth 10, maybe 100 times what he is offering. A major road is coming through here. And the paper has a clause that takes away all future compensation too. Mr. Udo is cheating you." Patience spun around, her eyes blazing. "You went through my things? You dare to lecture me?" She snapped. "A little cake seller wants to read contracts now? I see it clearly. You took that evening class so you could turn against me. You are greedy. You want to keep the whole piece of land for yourself." "No, Aunt," Mercy said, her voice shaking but firm. "This land belongs to me and Daniel. My father left it to us. I only want to keep my promise to him. I am not asking you for a single coin from it. I am only asking you not to let this man cheat us. Your father is dead." She shouted, her voice full of bitterness. "And I am the one feeding you. Is this how you repay me? By telling me what to do in my own house?" Gloria stood beside her, arms folded, smiling coldly. "Mother, this girl thinks she is smarter than all of us," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "She learned a few words, and now she thinks she is a lawyer. We need to show her where she belongs, Mother." Mercy looked at her cousin, then at her aunt, and she understood that words were useless now. They were not listening. The truth was, they did not want to listen. From that day, things turned bad very quickly. First came the small things. Gloria secretly hid Mercy's exam registration slip. Mercy searched for half a day, nearly in tears, before finding it stuffed behind a cupboard, crumpled. Another day, Gloria poured water into the batter Mercy had prepared for the morning market, ruining the whole batch. Mercy had to wake even earlier to make it again, without a word of complaint. Then patience forbade her from attending the evening class. "Stay home and work at night," she ordered. "That class only makes you spoiled." Mercy had to sneak out and sneak back, pretending she was going to collect supplies. Then one day, the tin box of savings hidden beneath the floorboard vanished. Months of careful saving, gone. Mercy knew who had taken it. But she said nothing. She clenched her teeth. She believed that, if she stayed silent and patient, the storm would eventually pass. She was wrong. Silence did not calm the storm. It only made those who created it feel free to go further. The night before her accounting certification exam, the exam that, if she passed, would give her a qualification, a path, a future. Mercy sat studying beneath the small lamp, until deep into the night. On the table lay the notebook she had written by hand, over many months. Every formula. Every lesson. Every note. An entire year wrapped up in those pages. Beside it sat her mother's old sewing machine, which she used to make bags for her cakes, and to take in mending for extra money. The two most precious things she had left. She did not know that, in the next room, her aunt was watching the lamplight glowing, from the corner of her room, and that inside the woman, bitterness had ripened, into a cruel decision. She told herself she had to put out that light. She had to show the girl who she really was. And she had to make sure Mr. Udo felt safe, certain that no one would stand in the way of the sale anymore. The next morning, Mercy woke to a sharp, burning smell. The smell of burning paper. Her heart seized. She sprang up, and ran to the corner of the house. Her notebook was no longer on the table. She rushed to the fire. Inside it, the pages had blackened, and curled, a few surviving words shriveling and dissolving. Mercy fell to her knees, and thrust her hands into the hot ashes, trying to save even a few scraps. But the moment she touched them, the paper crumbled in her hands like dust. She looked up. And in the spot where her mother's sewing machine had always stood, there was only an empty space. Slowly, she turned around. Aunt Patience stood in the doorway, arms folded, her face without a trace of remorse. "I sold the sewing machine," she said flatly, as if discussing the weather. "Sold it first thing this morning. And those useless notebooks of yours, I burned them. I also signed the land over to Mr. Udo last night, thumbprint and all. Everything is done. Now wake up from your little dream." Mercy stared at her aunt, unable to speak. She felt as if the ground beneath her feet had vanished. Why would you do this?" she finally whispered. "That sewing machine was my mother's. Those notebooks were my whole life." "Because you need to learn to accept reality," she answered coldly. "A poor orphan girl should learn to know her place, not study fancy contracts and dream up nonsense. I did this for your own good." Gloria appeared behind her mother, smiling in triumph, savoring every second of Mercy's pain. "No matter how much you study," she said, drawing out each word, "you will never become anyone important. That is just your fate." Mercy sank down beside the cold ashes, her hands black with soot. Her tears fell into them. A whole year. A whole year of waking early, and sleeping late. Now only smoke. She sat there for a long time. But strangely, in the middle of that tearing pain, something else began to rise inside her. A cold, steady calm. A clarity that was almost frightening. She looked at her aunt, looked at Gloria, and she understood something she had never seen before. These people were not simply against her dream. They were afraid of it. They were afraid that one day she would rise, and that her rising would expose their own smallness. People only fight so hard to put out a flame when they are afraid of its light. Mercy wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She stood up. She did not say another word. She walked straight out of that house. "Where do you think you are going? Come back here." Aunt Patience called after her. Mercy did not stop. She did not turn around. Because she understood something her aunt would never grasp. They had burned her notebook, but they could not burn what was already inside her mind. Every formula. Every lesson. Every line she had written, with her own hand. She still remembered. She remembered all of it. Fire could never reach those things. Her father had been right. People can take everything, but no one can take what you have learned. Mercy walked straight to the market, to Mama Comfort's stall. The old woman took one look at her swollen, red eyes and her ash-stained hands, and instantly knew something terrible had happened. "My child, what is it?" she asked, full of worry, pulling her down to sit. Mercy told her everything. The burned notebook. Her mother's sewing machine, sold. Her father's land, signed away to Mr. Udo. And that today, this very day, was the day of her exam. Mama Comfort listened, and across her wrinkled face passed so many things. Sorrow, then fury, then resolve. She took the girl's hands. "Listen to me, child," she said slowly. "Some people fear the very thing they cannot understand. They see you shining brighter than them, so they want to drag you down to their level. But that is their problem, not yours. You will not stop. Today, you still go and take that exam. Everything else, leave it to me." She reached into her pocket, and pressed exam money, and bus fare, into Mercy's hand. She called a fellow vendor to watch her stall, then took Mercy behind the counter, and handed her a clean set of her own daughter's clothes. "Wash your face. Change. You are not walking into that exam with hands full of ash. You are walking in with the mind you have prepared for a whole year." Mama Comfort even called over a few of her close vendor friends. When they heard the story, every one of them was outraged. One woman ran home and brought back a brand new pen. Another pressed a packet of food into Mercy's hands, so she would have strength. "Go, child," they said. "Go and make them eat their words." Mercy arrived at the exam hall late, out of breath, with nothing in her hands but a pen and herself. Mr. Okoro stood at the gate, anxiously searching for her. When he heard what had happened, he was silent for a moment, his face darkening with anger, then he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Go in, Mercy," he said, his voice firm. "You do not need a single notebook. Everything you need has lived inside your head for a long time. I know you. I believe in you. Now go in there, and show the whole world that fire can burn paper, but it cannot burn you." Mercy walked into the exam hall. Her hands still carried the scent of ash. But the moment she picked up her pen, her mind became startlingly clear. Every formula she had written by hand came back. Every lesson Mr. Okoro had taught rang in her memory. She wrote. She wrote as if her entire life were pouring out through the tip of her pen. Because it was. 3 weeks later, the results were announced. Mercy passed. And not only passed. She earned the highest score of the entire exam that year. But the certificate was not the only victory waiting for her. Because the knowledge inside her head was about to do something no one expected. It was about to win back her father's land. The moment she learned she had passed, Mercy brought the matter of the land to Mr. Okoro. She recalled every clause of the contract she had read in secret that night. When he had heard it all, his eyes lit up. "Do you remember exactly what it said?" he asked. "I remember every word, sir," Mercy answered. He took her to meet a contact at the land registry office. They searched the records. And everything became clear. Mr. Udo's contract had 2 fatal flaws. First, in the eyes of the law, that land was the inheritance of 2 children, Mercy and Daniel, not of Aunt Patience. She was only a guardian, with no right to sell the property of minors for her own gain. Her signature on the contract had no power to transfer ownership. Second, Mr. Udo had deliberately concealed information about the new road project, information that, as a land dealer, he certainly knew, in order to buy at a fraction of the value. That was deception, fraud, and grounds enough for a court to declare the contract void. "If you had not understood these numbers, and this fine print," Mr. Okoro said, his voice dropping, "your whole family would have lost everything today. They could have stolen the future of you, and your brother, and you would not have even known. There. Do you see now? Education is not for showing off. It is the weapon that keeps the poor from being bullied." Mercy nodded, her eyes growing hot. She thought of her father. She thought of the night he sat in silence, because he had been tricked into signing a paper. Now she understood his words completely. She filed the case. The matter was brought forward. Mr. Udo struggled, threatened, but when all the evidence was laid out, the void signature, the concealed information, the absurd price, he had nowhere left to run. The contract was declared void. The land returned to the two children. And just as the rumor had said, only a few months later, the major road project was officially announced. The value of the land soared, 100 times the figure Mr. Udo had once tried to pay. But Mercy did not rush to sell it. She remembered her father's words. This land is your future. She held on to it. Instead, she began building that future from the smallest possible thing. The story of the cave girl, who knew the law, who understood documents, who had won back her land, from a cunning dealer, spread throughout the market. People began coming to her. First, just to have their papers read. Then, to have their books kept. Many had traded their whole lives, without ever truly knowing whether a month had earned them a profit, or a loss, without ever knowing how to set aside a single coin. Mercy helped them. She set up income and expense books for each stall. She showed them how to price their goods correctly, how to calculate real interest, how to avoid being squeezed by middlemen, how to save even a little each day. At first she did it for free, as a way of repaying the market that had taken her in. But soon people insisted on paying her, because what she did for them earned them far more in return. Then Mercy thought bigger. She gathered the women of the market, the very women, who had stood beside her on the day she had nothing, and she started a savings cooperative. Each week, each woman contributed a little. Anyone who needed capital could borrow from the fund, and repay it slowly at low interest. For the first time in their lives, those hard-working women had something to lean on, when sickness came, or when their children needed school fees. "We can do this together," Mercy told them at their first meeting. "One person is weak. But many people gathered together are strong. None of us has to face poverty alone anymore." The fund grew. More and more people asked to join. Word spread far and wide. Before long, Mercy rented a small room and opened an accounting service for the small traders and businesses of the area. She hired staff, and the first person she hired was Mrs. Rose, the fish seller she had once saved from the loan shark. She trained each employee herself, teaching them everything Mr. Okoro had taught her. The girl once mocked, as someone who only knew how to sell cakes was now the person the whole market turned to whenever they needed to understand money, contracts, and how to hold on to the fruit of their own labor. And through all of it, she never forgot Daniel. She brought him to live with her and saw him through school all the way. She kept her father's land, intending one day to build a home on it for the two of them, exactly as she had promised long ago. While Mercy's life rose, the household of Aunt Patience fell. After the fraud was exposed, and the contract voided, Mr. Udo lost everything. He grabbed the small deposit he had paid, and fled the region, leaving Aunt Patience with nothing. The money she had believed was a stroke of luck turned out to be only a trap, and she was the fish that had taken the bait. Gloria, used to spending and showing off, had burned through whatever remained. She had never learned a trade, never done a single thing of substance, and now she had not one skill to support herself. The party friends of the old days, seeing she was broke, drifted away one by one. And most of all, there were no longer Mercy's silent, laboring hands. No one rose at 4 in the morning to sweep, fetch water, light the fire, and earn money. The house Mercy had quietly carried on her back now ran short of everything. There were days with nothing to eat. Only then did the two of them realize, too late, that the girl they had treated like a slave had been the very pillar holding up the whole roof. One afternoon, after many weeks of hunger and humiliation, Aunt Patience and Gloria made their way to the market. Their faces were gaunt, their clothes disheveled, their walk the walk of people who had reached the end of the road. They stopped in front of a small, but tidy office, where a sign read the name of an accounting service. Inside, Mercy was calmly discussing work with several of her staff, dressed neatly, carrying herself like a woman who had taken full command of her own life. For a long while, the two of them stood outside the door. Neither dared to step in. Neither could find a word to say. Then Aunt Patience spoke, her voice hoarse and trembling. "Mercy. I need your help." Gloria stood behind her mother, head bowed, unable to lift her eyes to meet the cousin she had once mocked day after day. The woman who had burned all her notebooks, sold her mother's sewing machine, signed away her father's land, now stood there, hungry and in rags, looking to the orphan she once despised, as the only person on earth who could save her. And the decision, now, rested entirely in Mercy's hands. Mercy looked up. She gazed at the two of them for a long moment. In that instant, so many memories rushed back. Every taunt. That morning she had knelt beside the ashes, picking out scraps of burned paper, with her two hands. The stolen tin of savings. Her mother's sewing machine. The pain was still there, whole and unfaded. If she had been someone else, this would have been a moment of sweet revenge. But then another stream of memories rushed back too. Mercy remembered Mama Comfort pressing money into her hand on the day she had nothing. She remembered Mr. Okoro standing at the exam gate, saying, "I believe in you." She remembered the vendor women running home to bring her a pen, a packet of food. If, back then, they had turned their backs on her the way her aunt now feared she would turn her back, she would never have had this day. She had received kindness when she had nothing. Now it was her turn to return that kindness to the world, even to those who did not deserve it. Mercy drew a deep breath. "Come in," she said softly. "Sit down first." The two of them stood stunned, then hesitantly stepped inside. Mercy had her staff bring out food and water. Aunt Patience took the food, and suddenly broke into tears, the tears of a woman who had lost all her pride. "I am sorry, Mercy," she said, her voice breaking. "I was wrong. I thought education was useless for a poor girl. I thought your dream was foolish. But now I know. The foolish one was me. I let my own bitterness blind me." Gloria looked up too, tears running down her face. "I was jealous of you, Mercy," she whispered. "I was jealous since we were children. I was afraid that if you succeeded, would be nothing. So I wanted to drag you down. I am sorry." Mercy looked at her cousin for a long moment. In her eyes there was no hatred, and no triumph. Only a calm that had been forged in fire. "You were never nothing, Gloria," she answered gently. "You have two good hands, and a mind of your own. But you let jealousy rule you. Jealousy never made you bigger. It only made you smaller." Then she turned to her aunt, and said the thing she had been turning over in her mind for a whole year. "It was the very education you mocked that let me read that contract and keep this land. If I could not read, could not calculate, then today the two of us would have nothing, and you would have nothing either, except a handful of stolen money. You burned my notebook, but you could not burn what I had learned. Because knowledge does not live on paper, Aunt. It lives in the mind. And that is the one thing in this world no one can ever steal." Aunt Patience bowed her head, and could not say a word. Mercy pushed the food closer to the two of them. "I will help you and Gloria," she said. "I will not let you go hungry. I can help Gloria find honest work, a trade so she can stand on her own 2 feet. But there is one thing I must say plainly." She paused, then continued, her voice gentle but unbending. "Things cannot go back to the way they were. I will not return to that house to be an unpaid servant ever again. I forgive you and Gloria. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean everything is the same as before." Gloria nodded, the tears still on her cheeks. "You deserve that," she said quietly. "I could never blame you, not for the rest of my life." And Mercy kept her word. She arranged a decent place for her aunt and Gloria to live. She found Gloria a job in the workshop of a tailor she knew, so she could learn a trade. She did not abandon them. But she also did not erase the line she had drawn, the line that protected her, and protected her dignity too. Because Mercy had learned a lesson no classroom ever taught. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, to set your own heart free. But trust must be rebuilt, with time and, with action, not with a few words of apology. Some doors close for a reason. And sometimes the greatest peace is found not in revenge, and not in forcing yourself to carry everything, but in drawing one honest boundary, and walking forward, with a lighter heart. Years later, on the land her father had left behind, the land that had nearly been lost to a swindler, Mercy built a small, but warm home for the two of them. By then, Daniel had finished his studies, and become a teacher, standing at the front of a classroom, passing on to poor children the very things his sister had once paid for in tears. One afternoon, the two of them sat on the front porch, watching the busy traffic of the great road that ran past, the very road that had once nearly cost them everything, and then made all of this possible. "Do you ever hate Aunt and Gloria?" Daniel asked. Mercy smiled and shook her head. "I used to. But staying angry only wears you out, little brother. Father once said no one can take what you have learned. I think he was right, but he left one part out. No one can take the way you choose to live, either. You choose kindness, or you choose bitterness. That, no one can force out of you." Daniel nodded. And in his heart, his sister would always be the greatest person he had ever known. And so the girl they tried to break became living proof of something powerful. The fire meant to destroy her future instead revealed something stronger. A mind that refused to surrender, and a flame of determination that no one could ever put out. If you are watching this to the very end, may you take this with you. People may take from you your money, your tools, even the roof over your head. But no one can take what has already become a part of who you are. So keep learning. Keep walking. Be kind, even to those who do not deserve it, but never forget to draw a boundary for yourself. Because one day, the very people who tried to burn down your future will have to watch it bloom in a way no fire could ever stop.